Sometimes in life you have to play down to your competition. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? You gotta dumb it down, because some people, shit, they got college degrees and master degrees and PhDs and shit, but they don't got no common sense. You know what I'm saying? How can you be so highly educated and y'all like common sense? And see, that's what separated me from everyone else. You know, my path, I went down a very dark path. You know, and I'm not trying to glorify the path that I went down on, but I'm just saying, like, you think you might have this set, straight, narrow path that that you're trying to pursue in life. But sometimes in life, something can come along the way to where your path to where your path alternates, and is what you do in that situation to determine what kind of path that you can create from there. you know and most people that graduated high school and shit, they went on to college. And I did too, but I waited a year. I graduated, then I didn't go that year that I graduated. I waited the year after. I went to college for 2 semesters, and I didn't go back again, because when I went to college to have fun. I didn't go to college to take my academic serious. And I don't regret. I have no regrets to this day, because school didn't it didn't teach you it didn't teach you anything. And it's sad, because I learned more shit being in the streets than I ever did in school. Because school, it doesn't really teach you, doesn't I mean it doesn't really guide you in a right way. When you go to school, it just strips you of your imagination. And that's why I never liked school, because this world, it runs on order and chaos. And I mean, not order and chaos, but order and comply, because you have to comply by the beast, the belly of the beast. You have to comply to their rules. Because if you don't comply to their rules, then there's consequences. And that's why I never gave a fuck about school, because school didn't help. School didn't teach me anything. I had to go down a dark path in order to be where I'm at right now. And honestly, I have no regrets what I did. I did. I'm gonna be honest with you guys. I did a lot of drugs, a lot of fucking drugs, from all the way from when I was 19 and all the way until now. Yeah, I did a lot of drugs, and I'm not happy about it, y'all. I'm not happy about it, because when I was younger, I didn't have no guidance. My mom, growing up, I never had any no other males to look up to. My mom, she didn't play that shit. She rarely brought men around me. You know, my mom didn't play that shit. You know, and then plus I was raised in a single in a single house, being the only child. So, um, you know, I've been a loner. I've been a loner for most of my life. You know, I never really had friends like that because, you know, I had imagination. You know, I could think of the stupidest shit that be in my brain, bro. And out of nowhere, bro, I start laughing because naturally I always been a cheerful dude. Always been cheerful. And always been cheerful, and I always been creative and shit. And you know, being around a lot of people and shit, just, you know, I felt like I couldn't be who I truly was. You know, I felt like my energy, I felt like my energy was siphoned. You know, and then when it came to school and shit, I never really fucked with too many people like that in school. You know, I might have had like maybe a few friends here and there, but I stuck to myself in school because kids in school was jealous of me. You know, and I was jealous of other kids too. You know, I was bullied in school, and I bullied other kids in school. You know, I'm not gonna come on here, y'all, and be fake like the rest of the world, because the rest of the world, you know, the rest of the world act like they never teased other kids, or they never bullied anybody. But I'm gonna be the first person to say that, you know, I back then I was a monster back then. You know, I didn't like, because I didn't have love. I didn't have love. I'm not saying from, you know, my mom and, you know, and shit like that. I'm saying from the world. The only person that loved me unconditionally was my mom and my grandma. Them was like the only two people in the world that loved me unconditionally. You know, and just not having any love, it just, you know, that's why I went down a dark path, because, you know, I did drugs because I didn't have no guidance. And then on top of that, it was my environment. My environment was the environment that you are in is going to play the biggest factor and how well you do in life. You know, because you might, okay, it might be 100 people in a village, but only a handful of those only a handful of those people is going to make it out of the village and turn their life into something extraordinary. You know, everyone else, you know, we have to, you know, order and comply and run on a false world's rules and regulations. You know, and not to say that even